Aber so richtig krass. Guck mal die Bäume an! Alter! Da ist ein Bäume weg.
Paramedics carried a boy with cerebral palsy down 4 flights of stairs after the elevator failed and rising water threatened the building. His wheelchair was damaged, but they improvised with a rolling dolly and straps. They didn't hesitate, said his mother. They treated him like family. The family was later airlifted to a shelter equipped for medical needs. The wind came so suddenly that Ella barely had time to grab her backpack. She ducked into a drainage culvert just as debris started flying past like shrapnel. For nearly 30 minutes, she lay curled in mud, listening to trees snap and metal twist. When it ended, she climbed out to find her street unrecognizable, cars flipped, roofs gone. But the culvert had protected her completely. Later, a rescuer said it was the smartest dumb luck he'd seen all week. In one neighborhood, a woman returned to find her brother's car still in the driveway, keys inside but no sign of him. His phone last pinged from the cell tower nearby minutes before landfall. Teams searched surrounding woods and ditches. As of Friday, he remains missing. It is one of 127 open missing person cases linked to the storm. As winds intensified and their home began to shake, the Patel family abandoned their living room and climbed into the walk-in freezer at the back of their restaurant. With wind screaming outside and parts of the roof tearing away, they sat in darkness for over an hour, surrounded by bags of frozen vegetables and crates of meat. It was the only room with no windows and a steel door, said Mrs. Patel. When they emerged, the dining area was destroyed, but the freezer was untouched. Cold never felt so safe, joked their teenage son. No one expected the tree to survive. It had stood in the town square for over a century, and as the storm hit, people watched it bend almost to the ground. The next morning, every building around it was damaged, windows shattered, signs ripped off, but the tree still stood, stripped of leaves but upright. Someone tied a ribbon to its trunk. 2 days later, others added flowers, candles, handwritten notes. It became a quiet monument to the idea that some things, even in chaos, can hold fast. During the worst hours of the storm, volunteer firefighter Dana Price made solo trips by boat into flooded neighborhoods, rescuing 11 people, including a bedridden woman and 3 small children. With official resources overwhelmed, Price launched her own kayak from the fire station and worked through the night. "I just couldn't sit there and wait," she said. Battling wind, darkness, and floating wreckage, she pulled one family from a rooftop using bed sheets as rope. Residents are calling her a hero. "She didn't hesitate," one survivor said. "She saved us when no one else could get through." An old man stood in the ruins of his workshop, running his hands over rusted tools he'd once polished every week. The wind had knocked down one wall, but left the other 3 standing, like a set on a stage. He didn't speak much as neighbors offered help. Instead, he swept sawdust from the floor, straightened a stool, and set a bent hammer carefully on the bench. "It's not gone," he finally said. "Just quieter now." First responders were stunned to find an SUV lodged halfway into the second-floor balcony of an apartment complex. According to witnesses, the parked vehicle was lifted by extreme winds during the hurricane's peak and hurled across a 40-foot embankment. No one was inside the SUV, and the residents of the affected apartment were unharmed. "I thought it was a bomb going off," said one tenant. Engineers say wind acceleration between nearby buildings likely created a tunnel effect. "It wasn't just strong wind. It was focused, violent wind," said a structural analyst on scene. A woman driving home before the worst of the winds hit watched in horror as the truck in front of her lifted off the highway and spun like a paper cup before crashing into a ditch. She pulled over, heart pounding, expecting the worst, but the driver crawled out, dazed but unharmed. "He looked more confused than injured," she said. Authorities said the wind reached over 110 miles per hour in that area, enough to lift lightweight vehicles off the road surface. During the height of the storm, a power crew spotted a cow standing calmly on the second-story balcony of an abandoned motel. The wind had apparently pushed it up a ramp and into the building. The balcony railing kept it from falling. It was safely led back to ground level once winds died down. Locals now call it the flying cow miracle, and the motel owner says he's never seen anything like it. Still had better manners than most guests, he added. After the hurricane and widespread flooding along the southern coast, rescue teams found 17-year-old Lucas Reyes floating alone through a submerged neighborhood, clinging to the door of a refrigerator. His family's trailer had been swept away overnight. Using jumper cables, Reyes tied himself to the door and drifted for 16 hours through dark, debris-filled waters. "I just kept thinking I had to stay awake," he told medics. Cold, dehydrated, and covered in cuts, he was taken to a local hospital and is expected to recover fully. Emergency officials called his survival remarkable and credited his quick thinking under pressure. When the winds ripped the roof from their small home, Ana Martinez had only seconds to react. She threw a mattress over her 2 young sons and laid across it as debris slammed into the walls and shattered glass flew. "It sounded like a freight train crashing through the sky," she said. For nearly an hour she held still, praying the house wouldn't collapse. The family was later found shaken but unharmed. The house was destroyed, except for the bedroom where they hid. "She saved their lives," one responder said. "Pure instinct and courage." Over 4,000 utility poles were downed across the affected zone, leaving more than 300,000 residents without power. Some communities may remain dark for weeks. Substations flooded, transmission lines snapped, and transformer fires were reported in multiple locations. Repair crews from 6 neighboring states have been dispatched, working 16-hour shifts. "We've never had this many lines down at once," said a utility spokesperson. Hospitals and shelters are running on backup generators, with fuel being airlifted into remote areas. I was holding a mug of coffee when it happened. 1 second, the porch was there, the swing, the plants, the little welcome mat. The next, it lifted like a magic carpet and vanished into the sky. I didn't scream. I just stood there with the door open and wind roaring like a jet engine. That porch had been there since '89. My daughter took her prom pictures on it. My dog gave birth under it, and now it's gone. I found the swing 2 blocks away, still swaying. Everything else? Somewhere in Kansas, maybe. An entire field of solar panels was ripped from its mounts and scattered across neighboring properties. One panel pierced the roof of a church 2 miles away, embedding itself in the pews. Another was found stuck in the side of a moving train. Despite the destruction, no injuries were reported. Engineers say wind uplift during the storm exceeded what most solar farms are designed to handle. Cleanup could take weeks, with fragments turning up in yards across 3 counties.
Isso é a natureza. Barra Shopping Sul.
Inmates from the county jail were evacuated by armored bus, hands zip-tied, escorted by National Guard. A low-lying floodplain threatened the facility, and officials moved over 140 prisoners to a high-security unit inland. It was a quiet, tense transfer. "We've never evacuated our jail before," said the sheriff. Power was lost 2 hours later, and parts of the jail were knee-deep in water by morning. When the winds began tearing shingles from roofs, 68-year-old Lester Jennings ran outside to retrieve his garbage bins. A sudden gust knocked him off his feet and sent him sliding across his lawn. He grabbed onto the metal base of his mailbox and held on as the wind roared over him. "I thought I'd be blown into the next county," he said. When the storm passed, he was soaked, bruised, but alive. His mailbox was bent and his house badly damaged, but Jennings credits that metal post for saving his life. "Strongest thing I ever installed," he joked. Responders searching a flooded street found a 2-year-old girl sitting on a floating couch, soaked but alive, her arms wrapped tightly around the family dog. No adults were nearby. The home had been destroyed hours earlier, and it's believed the rising water lifted the furniture to safety. The dog, a Labrador mix, reportedly barked until rescuers approached. Both were taken to a shelter, where the girl was quickly reunited with relatives. "We don't know how they survived," one firefighter said, but that dog never left her side. Authorities are calling it a small miracle amid widespread devastation. More than 800 homes were damaged or destroyed across the 3-county region after the storm's landfall. Preliminary aerial surveys revealed entire neighborhoods with only concrete slabs remaining. Emergency services reported over 1,200 calls in the first 12 hours. Winds exceeding 130 miles per hour tore roofs from apartment buildings and scattered insulation across highways. Officials estimate it will take at least 6 months to restore power fully. "This is the worst structural damage we've seen in decades," said the regional director of emergency management. After the storm passed, silence fell so suddenly it felt wrong. Everything that once made sound, birds, cars, wind chimes, was gone or broken. James stood barefoot in the wet grass, staring at the sky. His house had lost half its roof, and a pine tree lay across his porch. But all he could think about was how quiet the world had become. It felt like the wind stole the noise, he later told a neighbor. That night, he slept on a mattress in the garage, listening for anything to return. Following the hurricane's landfall, hundreds of birds were found lifeless across downtown rooftops and streets, apparently killed mid-flight by powerful wind bursts. Experts believe the sudden pressure changes and extreme gusts disoriented or crushed them mid-air. They had no chance, said a local wildlife official. It was like a wall of air moving at highway speeds. Residents were stunned by the eerie sight. It looked like they just fell from the sky, one woman said. Cleanup crews collected the bodies as part of post-storm recovery. Scientists call the event rare, but not unprecedented. During peak gusts, Harold Grant stepped outside to check on his generator and was lifted off his feet by hurricane winds. He landed 30 feet away in a muddy ditch, stunned but alive. It felt like a hand just picked me up and dropped me, he said. He suffered bruises and a fractured wrist, but managed to crawl back inside his home before the next wave of wind hit. Emergency crews later found trees snapped like twigs in his yard. "I'll never take wind warnings lightly again," Grant said from his hospital bed, smiling weakly. A group of 5 hikers who had set out before the storm were reported overdue when families lost contact. Their last known location was near a backcountry trail in the national forest. Heavy winds toppled trees and blocked access roads. Rescue teams located their abandoned campsite but found no sign of the hikers. A coordinated search is underway with drones, dogs, and volunteers. The 140-year-old bell tower of St. Jude's Church collapsed overnight as hurricane winds exceeding 100 miles per hour battered the region. Witnesses described a thunderous cracking sound before the structure crumbled, scattering bricks across the square. No one was injured as the area had been evacuated, but the loss of the historic landmark hit locals hard. "It was the soul of this town," one resident said through tears. Authorities say the winds were too strong for the aging structure to withstand. Volunteers are already planning to preserve parts of the wreckage for future restoration. A caravan of RVs and pickup trucks crawled along the interstate, packed with families, pets, and everything they could strap down. Some pulled boats, others had tarps over furniture. Gas ran out in 2 towns, and the National Guard airlifted fuel to stranded drivers. It was the largest civilian evacuation the county had seen since the 1990s, with more than 150,000 people leaving in under 48 hours.
Oh mein Gott. Alter.
A mother and her 3 children drove nearly 400 miles over 2 days, sleeping in the car and fueling only where possible. Every hotel along the route was full. They finally found shelter in a church gymnasium converted to emergency housing. "We packed for a weekend, not for losing our home," she said. The Red Cross registered over 10,000 evacuees in the region by the end of the week. When the hurricane hit, 16-year-old Brianna lost nearly everything. Her family's home was badly damaged, and most of their belongings vanished in the wind. But 3 days later, a neighbor found her bright blue prom dress tangled in a tree 3 miles away, still intact. "It sounds silly," she said, but it was the one thing that felt normal. Volunteers cleaned and restored it. Local businesses are now planning a community prom for displaced teens. "After everything we've lost," Brianna said, "this one dress being found made it feel like hope's still out there."